Waiter makes woman regret not tipping. When 60-year-old New Yorker Christy Jolly took her daughter for lunch that day, she'd only hoped to celebrate Melissa's new promotion at work. A single mom, Christy had been through a lot. She'd fought through tough times raising her daughter alone. Now a retired senior, she only wanted to spend time with Melissa whenever she could and enjoy life. Melissa had gotten her first promotion at work, an occasion that Christy was eager to celebrate. She made plans with her daughter to grab lunch at a restaurant in Manhattan before they'd cook dinner at home as a continuation of the celebration. With everything set, the two met at a famous pizzeria and ordered their food. But as they waited for the pizzas to come, something happened that would set the events of that week in motion. Christy was about to buy a new house and was thinking about how to decorate it. She'd grappled with what style to settle for. She couldn't help but notice the restaurant's warm and rugged country-style decor. Thinking it would be the best answer to her problem, she thought it fitting to ask the waiter about the decor's name and perhaps its designer, but then she noticed something. The pizzeria's current owner, Frank Brinja, is extremely proud of the establishment's heritage. Patsy's Pizzeria opened its doors in 1933. The walls are decorated with photographs of numerous patrons' famous faces and accolades, painstakingly collected over a span of 86 years. The waiter noticed that the two women had their eyes on the wall, scrutinizing every last detail as they waited to be served. For the 27-year-old waiter, the day had started as usual, serving tables at the busy Patsy's Pizzeria in Harlem, New York City. He worked long hours to put himself through medical school and prided himself on providing the best service he could, and he did it all with a smile. Tommy quickly approached the women and greeted them with a warm smile, and they ordered 2 New York pizza slices. So far, so good. But when Tommy returned, the older woman stopped him and pointedly asked a question that he would never forget. The waiter brought Christy and Melissa's food. Christy asked about the decor as he served them, but the answer wasn't what she was expecting. "I don't know what to tell you, ma'am," the waiter said curtly. "Ask the manager, thanks." That's when Christy decided to ask him another question. "Why are there so few pictures of women on the wall?" she asked pointedly. "Maybe women don't eat a lot of pizza," Tommy stammered. As a server, Tommy expected to have good customers and bad customers. And some were just downright rude. But even if he prepared for the worst, it didn't completely take the sting out of being stiffed by rude patrons. Nevertheless, he resolved to always try his best to give all his customers equally good service. His livelihood depended on tips. He just prayed that there wouldn't be any more trouble today. An hour passed, and the woman and her daughter paid for their pizzas and left. Although Tommy was sure she hadn't left him a tip, he still hurried over to clear their table. He expertly stacked dirty plates in one hand and picked up the serviettes strewn over the table. And that's when he saw it. He wasn't expecting a tip. But when he looked inside the bill folder, the note he found was far more hurtful. In Tommy's hand was a check. And not a measly $100 or $1,000 check either. This one was worth $424,000. Tommy stared at the check. He'd been having trouble at medical school for the last week because of tuition fees. It was the exact reason why he'd been so stressed lately. He needed money, or he'd miss his finals. Such a check would do more than solve the problem. Tommy had a very big decision to make. If he wanted to, he could teach the woman a powerful lesson. He weighed his options carefully. On the one hand, he had the option to just throw the check away. No one would be the wiser. Christy sat in her daughter's car as they drove home from lunch. She informed Melissa that she'd cashed out her life savings in a check, and it would be enough to buy her new home. She'd just sold her apartment, and the amount was the proceeds that she planned to use as a down payment on a new home. She searched around her bag for the check but couldn't find it. Christy told Melissa what was happening. She explained that she'd placed the check in her bag about 5 hours before but couldn't seem to find it. The two began their search around the city, visiting and calling all the places Christy had been before they went for lunch. They even called the pizzeria, but the manager's answer left them speechless. "We haven't seen it," the manager said with surety. He insisted that such a trivial document would have been returned immediately were it found within their premises. Christie called the bank to try and report the case, but the answer she received was worse than the restaurant's. The bank told her anybody could cash the hefty check in the next 3 months before they could freeze it. They said they couldn't immediately cancel it because it was a cashier's check. I would have to wait at least 3 months before they could even start the process, and only if someone didn't cash it in the meantime, Karen explained. Without that check, Karen wouldn't have a home. She had been staying with friends, sleeping on a different couch each night. Distraught by everything that was happening, Christie turned in for the night. She couldn't believe she'd lost everything she'd spent more than 40 years amassing. Her blood, sweat, and tears were slipping out of her reach as she watched. She sat through the night, numb from the pain constantly shooting through her. How could life be so cruel? Tommy sat with his manager at the restaurant as the night passed by. They'd spent the entire afternoon and evening trying to trace a Christie Jolly, the woman whose name was on the $400,000 check. After Tommy found the check, he'd considered cashing it for a chance to change his life, but knew he couldn't. He ran to his manager with the check, and they'd started searching for the woman. So why couldn't they find her? Normally we just put things left behind in the lost and found box in the back, he said. But I wasn't going to do that with almost $500,000, Tommy explained. Frank tried to track the woman, whose name on the check, but didn't have any luck. He then decided to wait to see if she would retrace her steps and come back. We decided we would hold on to the check for a couple days to see if she would drop by or if we could find her ourselves, he said. Tommy and his manager couldn't find a Christie Jolly who matched the woman's description. They reached out to New York Daily News for help, and the media house took 3 days to call back. Their search had collided with a woman scouring the city for a similar check. Just under half an hour later, Karen arrived at the pizzeria. And Tommy was waiting to greet her at the door. But did she feel sorry that she had stiffed him so rudely? When Tommy finally met the woman to give her the check, she hugged him, thanking him for being such an amazing person even though she wasn't nice to him. She'd called a different branch of their restaurant only to come up short. "Don't ever change," she said amid tears. She was so happy and she was in tears, says Frank. But, the second she saw Tommy, you could see she got a little shy. She must have felt like a fool. At least she had the sense to undo some of her wrongdoing by offering the hard-working server a finder's fee, and apologized profusely for being so nasty. Tommy accepted Christie's apology, but declined the money. "I'm happy for her, really," he confessed. "Saturdays are pretty busy, and I was very close to taking everything left on the table and throwing it out when I saw an envelope." Frank took Christie over to the wall of memories and pointed out all the women's faces that she had missed that Saturday. There were photos of TV host Barbara Walters, First Lady Chirlane McRae. Danny Meyer, a restaurant owner who manages a wide array of bars and restaurants in New York City, has decided to do away with tipping altogether in his establishments. With Danny Meyer leading the way, hopefully, others will follow suit. This will ensure that service workers like Tommy are given fair compensation for the valuable work they do and don't have to live off tips.